Hey everyone, it's the Bald Man once again. This is just going to be a little video on more spending and tax multiplier practice. Just in case we need that additional help right before we take our test later this week. So, here we go. As you can see, we are in an economy that is in a recession. We should be at $200 billion output, but we are at $100 billion. Now, so what can the government do? They can either spend or tax, right? They can use fiscal policy. In this case, there would have to be expansionary fiscal policy, so they could either lower taxes or increase spending. In this situation, we have chosen to increase spending. So if the marginal propensity to consume equals zero point 0.9, how should government change spending to close the gap? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to find the spending multiplier. Now, the spending multiplier formula is 1 over MPS. We have MPC equals 0.9, so that means my MPS has to equal to 0.1. Why? MPC plus MPS always has to equal to 1. So if this is going to be 1 over 0.1, which means, you remember, we don't like decimals inside fractions, so it's going to be 1 over 1/10, which means my multiplier is going to be 10. And we have a $100 billion deficit, so I'm going to divide that $100 billion by 10, and I'm going to get 10. So my answer here, guys, because remember, they're asking how government should change spending to close the gap, the answer is going to be increase spending by $10 billion in order to close the gap. So let's move on to the next example. Here you can see that the economy is overextended. We are at $280 billion of output, but we need to be at $200 billion. So in this case, we would need to do what we call contractionary fiscal policy, which is either increase taxes or decrease government spending. Here we have chosen to use taxes to close this gap. Now, my tax multiplier is MPC over MPS. So if my MPS equals 0.8, that means if my MPC equals 0.8, that means my MPS has to equal to 0.2. Why? 0.8 plus 0.2 will give me 1. So 0.8 over 0.2 will give me 4. I have a budget surplus of 80 billion. 80 billion divided by 4 will give me 20. And here, our answer should be the government needs to increase taxes by $20 billion in order to close the gap. All right, let's do one more example. In this case, the government is spending $75 billion. Right, that's all we know. They're spending $75 billion, and the marginal propensity to consume is 0.75. Now they're asking what is the maximum possible change to GDP that could happen as a result of this additional government spending. Well, again, we have our MPC equals 0.75. We need to find our spending multiplier because the government did spend an additional $75 billion, right? So it's going to be 1 over 0.25, which is actually 1 over 1/4, which means my multiplier is 4. So I need to multiply 75 times 4 in order to find our answer. So once we do multiply 75 times 4, we find out that we get an additional $300 billion increase in GDP. All right. So if you guys have any questions on how the spending and or tax multiplier work, please feel free to drop a comment down below or send me a message on Remind.